Hi YouTube, I know I said we're not going to do any gunsmithing work on film here, and well, if I'm going to put videos up, you're going to have to come along on this one. We're going to refinish the wood of this 1873. We're going to get it ready for show. Aiming to see what goes into our guns. So, we're already got all the lacquer stripped off. Still got the fore end to do. We got our little safe edge piece, if you want to call it that, the block of aluminum. You just routed the corners on. We're sanding with some 320, and all we want to do is we want to go with the grain, making sure we get everywhere on the stock. Now as we go, I am going to brush up on the metal here, and as you can see, I've been eating the metal back here, and that's okay. It's okay. That helps us make sure we don't get rounded edges, and it makes sure it fits nice. Another thing, I don't know if you guys can hear that. I can feel it. We're going to take a file. It means we got a bit of proud metal here. That's common with these Italian guns. And we're just going to chase that right off. We may have to go get the apron for this guy. I've had to fit this point down here, and it is rather unpleasantly sharp. So all I'm doing on the back side, where you can't see obviously, is this corner right here on this side. I'm just filing that. I'm trying to get it down flush with the wood, and we're almost there. It's important to get it flush because the sandpaper will always take off more wood than metal, even with the little edge saver piece. Now, how we strip the lacquer is I take the back edge of a handsaw or some form of scraper and pull it all off and get these shavings here. Some of them are very white. As you can tell, they use some kind of a plastic type coating. When we do the fore end, you'll see them. They're very white. Now that we've done that little bit of messing up the wood, and go back to our 320. We're just going to sand all that back out. And we want to take the file marks out of the metal too. Same process here. We're still getting that ticking noise on. Sure enough, there it is. Still proud. It may be there to stay. Alright, I'm going to pause this. I'm going to go get the apron. Alright, we're back with the apron. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the file. Now, the initial thought is to be very worried about the bluing and the colors. We're going to refinish this metal. There's no other way of doing this right that does not involve scraping up, especially the butt plate, but most of the metal. Most of the metal is going to get affected in one way or another. We're done with that for now. We're just going to go ahead and sand it all down. I think soon we're going to be ready to wet this guy out. Raise the hairs is what we call that process. We're going to put some kind of a liquid on here, and it's going to help raise up all the little hairs we've sanded down. This dust off of here. Start to see what it is we're working with. Apologize for the light. It is definitely more for me than for you. Intense light helps see any kind of standing imperfections we have here. So we got pretty good. Typically I'll blow this out with the air compressor. I'm going to wet this out, raise the hairs. I use denatured alcohol because, well, simple, it dries fast. I want this done quicker. Stretch a little bit. All we want to do is wet the stock with it. Doesn't have to be even, doesn't have to be pretty. Just get it all hit. We just want that to soak in. And then all the little hairs that we ground down sanding will stand back up. Whenever we sand them again and again and again, eventually they'll stop being so standing up. Now, As we feel it, you'll feel when they feel rough again. That's all the spots we have to sand again. And we just want to continue the process. Now, as soon as we start sanding, you're going to see the stock lighten back up a little bit. I know it's a little lighter for you on camera than it is for me, but it is pretty immediate from where I'm sitting. I'm going to get up inside the cone, the point notch here. And then over time, sandpaper will start to clog up. That'll help clear it out. You always want to sand with it, but we want to take even passes here too. Now, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to the edges of the metal than anywhere else, because that's where, when your hands go to it, that's what you're going to feel. So we work our way around. Make sure I get this here nice and well. Okay, again, all clogged up. And for the most part, it's cleared back out. Now, as we come up here towards the end, we'll start working on the toe. For those of you who are not aware, this is your wrist, this is your comb, and over here, this is going to be the toe of the stock, and this is sometimes either referred to as the comb of the stock, or the heel of the stock, or the point of the stock. Kind of depends on which books you're reading, from when they are, American, English, French, things like that. This is always going to be your toe. So we want to cover the comb, the wrist, we want to get the faces of the stock, then we're going to get the toe line. The toe line is important on a gun like this because we do want it relatively straight. Now, in a perfect world, it would be perfectly straight, but we're starting with an Italian gun, and even getting the straight wrist, they are not truly straight. Now I've just got a pair of leather gloves in here, hold on to the receiver, but it has a slight belly to it here, and it's not particularly worth removing. So now I'm going to come back in here. Look at that. Blend this line right on in. Fingers are slipping. Alright. Work this guy around. We're feeling pretty good here. We still got a couple of spots we need to hit. The important thing with this process is attention to detail. So as we go, we just want to hit these areas that we feel a little rough. As you might even be able to see that. One thing you'll find as you go through these Italian guns after a little while is, they're not perfect, and that's okay. You know, it's wood, it's a natural product. We expect that, but they do what they can, keeping the price as low as they can for quality build. And I do think most of these Italian guns, this one here is particularly, it's Uberti, imported detailers. They're my favorite candidates for this kind of stuff because their actions are pretty sound right out the gate. A little bit of trigger adjustment, and slide a short stroke kit in it. Sometimes it takes a little extra fitting. And it doesn't take too long before you got a working gun that's ready to go do its thing in somebody's hands. Good time. But we're just going to keep at this for the next little while, and I'll bring you guys back when it's time to do some staining. And we'll see how that goes and I'll show you the color I like to use. Alright, I'll be back in a bit. We are back. Alright, so we've sanded all the hairs out. Now, one thing I will say, I know I said I used denatured alcohol there in the beginning. And I do that to get rid of mainly the big hairs that like to show up. But towards the end, the only real way you're ever going to get all of them is if you do hit it with some water. So I do that 2 or 3 times at the end. Very light coats, just to raise whatever hairs I can. And after you sand that, once you sand that, all you're doing is you're just sanding the hairs. Just sand just the hairs. You don't have to sand the whole thing. Get the hairs to go away. Get it all blown out. Make sure it's all good and well. Now, we're going to stain. So I just use this birchwood Casey's walnut, cut with a little bit of water down in there. Hit it with a dauber here. Kind of takes a minute. It's a water-based dye. It doesn't like to really absorb into the wool dauber here. Once it does, it's in there deep. So just rub that about. It's gonna drip. It's gonna make a mess. It's okay. We're gonna clean all that up later. Right now, we just want to get the dye on. So get that nice in there. Don't worry about it being pretty and perfect. It'll take what it wants. We'll give it a chance to calm down, and we'll give it some more. Remember, we sanded to 320 over and over again. Got all the hairs out, which are all the little straws. So this stuff may not want to take, and that's fine. It'll get its opportunity. So we just keep giving it some stain here. Make sure we get the toe line. Don't want to miss anything, especially in an area like that. It's quite noticeable, even though it's on the bottom. That'll be the first thing. Oh, whacked the camera. That's my bad. But be the first thing everybody's eyes are drawn to. I like a rustic look in my guns, so I don't much care for perfect, even coats. I kind of try and saturate some areas more than others, actually. I want the gun to look old. Just want it to run like new. I don't try and fool anybody, though. I don't take the numbers and all the markings off. Or defarb it for you reenactment types. I don't do all that. I just like to give her some character. It'll write its own story in time, but nothing says we can't give it a little help. So let's try and keep it where it would naturally get wear. So right around the comb and the wrist. Alright, now we're going to let that set for a few minutes here. And then we'll wipe that off. Alright. So we'll come back when this is ready to get wiped. I'm going to give it a couple minutes. No point in everybody just standing around. Alright, it's been a couple of minutes now. We're just going to wipe off some excess here. I got a spot that is just a little on the light side here. Just remember when I said don't miss it? I missed it. Could have solved that problem. Getting lazy. Alright. A couple options here. We can go ahead and throw another coat We can sand it, or we can let it dry. We can finish it. I'm gonna sand it. I'm gonna go down to probably, so we were at 320. I'm probably gonna go down to 400. A little overkill, but it's gonna start to work in a paste essentially of stain and sawdust, for lack of a better term, down into the pores of the wood, and it's gonna start to kind of give me a better basis for when it comes to sealing it. So I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna sand it. Bring you back probably there at the end of that process so we can see what actually happens there. I'll be back. Alright, so we're just finishing up, kind of buffing it a bit here, if you will, with the 400. Not going super crazy. There'll be plenty of time for all that later. Right now, we're just trying to kind of balance it. So it actually ends up looking a lot better on camera than it is in person right now. So you guys actually see a brown color. To me, it's almost purple. As I sand this down, I get a lot of the streaking. That's not entirely an accident. So I could accomplish the same task later on with just the finish, and I'll still do it because this is only going to minorly help me in the grand scheme of finishing this guy up. What this kind of does with me though is this lets me get a little bit different color pattern to it. Makes it stay unique. It does help with spilling it a little bit just by kind of packing everything down into the pores. But the magic comes in the next step here. Next, and more dye. Anybody who's seen the wood we do with the pistols, this is how we do that. And it's got a real deep, kind of traditional walnut brown to it. It ends up looking really nice. So I'll finish this up and then we'll be back. Okay, so after 2 coats of dye, stain, whatever we call it, this is where this guy's going to set. So this is going to be its final color. It'll get a little bit more rich as we add the finish and we get that sanded in and get it all sealed. But at this point, it's got to dry. And the only way to do that is to give it time. So we'll revisit this probably tomorrow or the next day, depending on time. So we'll revisit that as soon as we can.